An analysis of the business environment should begin with and should primarily focus on where do you stand with respect to the other players in the market. Now, you cannot just be internal looking and focusing on your own strategies and paths and ideas, but you should be acutely aware of what is happening in the business world around you, which is why an analysis of competitive factors and analysis of competitors is going to pave the way for your understanding of your business and how you can grow. And that brings us to the topic of today's discussion, which is basically competitive analysis. And again, competitive forces and competitive analysis is an often tested part in your SBL exam. When you are given the pre-scene information, company overview, and industry overview, I think a major part in most SBL papers is that you need to prepare a detailed competitive analysis using Porter's five forces model, which is what we are going to study right now. So let's dive right into it. See, strategy is not just about having a vision statement. It is about deeply understanding the forces that shape your business and that shape the competition in your industry and the market dynamics that influence profitability. And see, you never work in isolation. As a faculty also, I need to be aware of who are the other faculties who are also teaching ACCA students right now. What prices are they charging? What is their business model like? I need to understand all of that. So my profitability is going to majorly depend on myself, but also on what my competitors are doing, which is why the discussion on strategy has to involve a competitive analysis. Michael Porter, he revolutionized the way the business thinks about competition. Of course, before he gave his framework, companies would mostly look only at direct competitors. So the idea was who is selling the same product that I am selling, right? And that's all. And maybe they would look at the price and the features of that product. But Michael Porter said, okay, this is too narrow. And competitive analysis cannot just be who is selling what I am selling and what are the features of this product and what is the price. True competition, according to him, came from five different forces, all of which can eat up into your profits. So, in today's session, what we are going to do is we'll break down Porter's five forces model and connect them to market segmentation and targeting strategies. And to make things real, let's try to bring about some examples, some relatable examples from Indian companies and some from some global players as well. See, you will have to understand that strategic analysis is not theoretical. So if you do a proper competitive analysis, that could be the difference. Not just competitive analysis, you also have to work on it. When you do that analysis, it will be the difference between a company that really thrives and grows in the market as opposed to another one that simply fades away, into oblivion. So let's try to understand Porter's five forces model as given by Michael Porter. So he identified that there are five competitive forces which shape the industry dynamics and which have ultimately an impact on your profitability. Not paying attention to even one of these could have a significant impact on your profit. Porter's extensive research revealed that there are five distinct competitive forces. Okay, the first one is threat of new entrants, then competitive rivalry, then substitutes, presence of close substitutes and other substitutes, then suppliers, bargaining power of suppliers, and bargaining power of buyers. Now, you should not think, for example, today who is, say, for example, I'm talking about running a sports arcade, okay, where people come and play games. Now, earlier days, people would say, "Ki, okay, if I'm running a bowling alley and there is another person also who is running a bowling alley, then he is my direct competitor." But today, your competitor could be Instagram Reels, which are keeping people hooked to their phone and which are not allowing the customers to ultimately reach the bowling alley. So it is important that you define what exactly amounts to a substitute and then you do a detailed analysis on that. Now, when we talk about Porter's five forces model, the first aspect which has an impact on the competitive environment and which can eat up into your profits is threat of new entrants. I mean, if I were to look at the ACCA coaching industry right now, I think there are so many institutions and so many faculties coming up. And of course, there are newer people, younger people coming into the market who have a lot of energy and the existing players are naturally worried about that the other players will take up their market share. Now, one of the biggest forces is the threat of new entrants. See, new players bring in new capacity, fresh ideas. They often bring in aggressive pricing, and which can hurt the people who are already functioning. Now, somebody who is a fresh faculty in the ACCA market, for example, this fresh faculty is bringing in a course at 10,000 rupees. And for me, for functioning at the level that I am functioning, maybe I cannot charge 10,000 rupees because it will have a dent on my profitability. I mean, take the example of Jio, Reliance Jio. When Jio entered the Indian telecom sector in 2016, it disrupted the industry overnight by offering free calls and ultra cheap data. And who were the existing players back then? Airtel, Vodafone, and Idea. And they suddenly faced a lot of pressure. I mean, companies like Aircel, companies like Uninor, they could not even survive. And Jio changed the entire landscape. And see, it was possible because Jio was fueled by Reliance, which in itself is a behemoth when it comes to, market presence. So many of them faced pressure, and companies like Vodafone Idea in India had to merge together, and that itself tells you the impact of a new entrant coming into the market. Now, because Jio was a brainchild of Reliance and it had the backing of Reliance, it could navigate all the compliance parts, it could navigate all the licensing arrangements, it could navigate the huge capital requirement that is, a necessity in the telecom sector. But you don't see new entrants coming into the market every day, right? And there's a reason, because the telecom industry basically requires a huge capital investment, and these massive capital, and you need huge cash for these massive capital investments. And Reliance has it, not everyone has it, which is what makes the entire, which is what creates a lot of barriers to the entry of, new participants. But the ACCA coaching segment, let's take that as a complete, opposite of the telecom industry. Today, all you need to become a faculty is you need a laptop and an internet connection. That's all, and you are a faculty because classes are happening in the online mode. So that is why there are less barriers to entry. But in sectors, in segments, where you already have a high initial capital requirement, naturally the entry becomes difficult. In the aviation sector, capital requirements are enormous. That's why you don't see new airlines coming up so easily, right? I mean, you have an Akasa and Kingfisher failed, and you don't see new airline companies popping up every day. So, as strategists, we must ask ourselves a question: how easy is it for new players to enter our industry, and what barriers can we build to protect ourselves? Like, if somebody wants to enter the food industry, for example, see, entering the food industry, of course, not you might be a cook, a great chef, for example, but setting up a business also is capital intensive, plus you need a lot of regulatory permissions. So those act as barriers to entry, right? And with new entrants, the same market is, distributed between more players, and you could end up losing your market share. There is erosion of your market share, and existing companies might have to make a greater investment in marketing in order to retain the customers, because customer loyalty in today's day and age, frankly speaking, is a myth. And newer players coming into the market offering lower prices and attractive discounts could take away your existing customer base. Now, the barriers to entry will often act as, strategic defense mechanisms in telecom sector, because the initial capital investment is humongous. You will rarely find people trying to enter that sector. Now, existing suppliers, for example, a company like in the education field, a company like say Allen, a company like those Fiji classes and all of that, they have huge cash in their bank accounts, and they are operating at a very large scale, which makes it possible for them to train thousands of students in a day without incurring a very heavy faculty cost. Also, a part of their, even if they are making marketing expenditure as compared to the total revenue, it's a very small number. Now, small players will not have that economy of scale, and they will have to shell out huge chunks of money just to run a website. Whereas the stronger players have it all, figured out. Brand loyalty. See, brand loyalty, if at all customers are addicted to a particular brand and they swear by that brand, then it is very difficult for new entrants to make their space. For example, there's this one coffee shop that I really like. Uh, and I would only prefer having coffee from that shop. So even if a new shop comes, I am a blue tokai person. I am not going to anyone else. So even if there are new players in the market, this brand loyalty will stop me from going to another player. And of course, legal and regulatory requirements, compliance burden might deter people from entering a particular sector. Now, the while the first force was threat of new entrants, that is what we discussed. And we discussed, how barriers to entry can prevent these new entrants from entering the market. The second competitive force is threat of a substitute product. Okay, what is a substitute? In school, when you studied economics, they would say, oh, tea and coffee are substitutes of each other, or something, as simplistic. Or a burger from McD and a burger from, Burger King are substitutes of each other. A product or a service that satisfies the same set of needs but originates in a different industry or a different state of technology, that is a substitute. It doesn't have to be in today's time in 2025, it doesn't have to be a product from a direct competitor. It could be from a completely different industry but satisfying the same need. Your need is entertainment. You wanted to go out and play a pool, for example. But now that same entertainment is in the form of reels on Instagram. And so that is your substitute. A substitute doesn't mean a direct competitor, always. Think about Swiggy and Zomato. Their biggest substitute is not another food delivery app. It's your local restaurant where customers choose to dine in instead of ordering. Now, during COVID-19 lockdowns, when dining out was impossible, delivery apps flourished. But now that those restrictions have ceased, substitutes like eating out at malls or cooking at home returned, and now somewhere the delivery volumes are affected. Another example, think of Ola and Uber versus metros in Delhi, Mumbai, and other big cities. They both solve the same problem, which is physical movement at work. And as metros have expanded, the all these, I mean, radio taxis and all of that, they have seen a decline in demand. I mean, Netflix was a huge phenomena till, you had other people also getting into the streaming business. I mean, you have Z5, you have Sony Live, you have Hotstar Premium, you have everything under one roof now. And there's YouTube also, which is free if you really think about it. And, gaming websites could also be competitors of Netflix, right? There are people who would prefer playing games and paying for that instead of paying 200 rupees to Netflix for a subscription. Instagram, all of them are competing for your attention. So you are the winner, and these are people who are hankering around you to get your attention. And Instagram and Netflix, see, Instagram is a photo sharing app that way, or a reel sharing app. Netflix is a streaming platform, but both of them are vying for your attention because they are competing for your leisure time. Now, smart companies, they don't ignore substitutes. If you are aware of what exact need is your product trying to fulfill. For example, like we discussed, Netflix is not just entertainment, it is basically a focus for your leisure time. So if, say, a gaming arcade in your area is basically providing the same service to you, is basically providing the same features to you, then that becomes your competitor. I mean, think about it. Some companies like Tata, for example, they have launched Tata New as a super app. Or, that is what is differentiating their offering. So customers feel that there is no substitute. There might be, but it's at least, the perception that has been created. Now, substitutes create volume threats when customers might switch to alternatives that fulfill similar needs. Not everybody is addicted to Netflix in the same way. I mean, a good substitute of Netflix is, table tennis courts opening up. So, this force becomes particularly dangerous when substitute performance improves or costs decline relative to existing products. And how do you tackle the threat of new substitutes? You produce and control, develop substitute products internally to capture switching customers and maintain market control. You know that for your pizza, which is your flagship product, you could very soon have a competition in the form of, say, sandwiches or burgers. So you could, under your same company, you could have a completely independent brand trying to fulfill that demand. Or you could, go for the acquisition strategy where instead of trying to tackle competition from substitutes, you acquire those companies and you increase your portfolio of product offerings. Or You try to add certain differentiating factors or features to your product so that customers believe that there is absolutely no one who can do what you do for them. So the idea of product differentiation also could help you to tackle the threat of substitutes. The third aspect is the bargaining power of buyers. What is bargaining? You go to a street market and you haggle for prices. Somebody shows you a shirt for 400 and you say, no, I'll pay only 80 rupees. You are bargaining. When I say bargaining power of buyers, that means do the buyers have the ability to negotiate the prices, push the price down and demand more value? I mean, you do that in a vegetable market or, in street shopping all times, right? I mean, I was on one of my trips and someone said, okay, you know what, this auto that you want to take, it will cost you 400 rupees. And I said, no, I'm paying only 100 because the distance isn't much. And if I can push the price down, then that means my bargaining power is bigger. Okay. Now look at the Indian IT industry or the Indian IT outsourcing industry. Okay. There, companies like Infosys, TCS, Wipro, they serve global giants like JP Morgan and General Electrical or Walmart. These clients are huge in size compared to the IT vendors, so they negotiate aggressively on price, service levels, and contracts. This keeps the margins under constant pressure. I mean, Walmart is huge. You don't even have an idea of how deep the business flourishes, and what is the level of penetration of that particular course, or sorry, that particular business. I keep on thinking about courses all day. I'm so sorry. Now think about the FMCG sector. Okay, retailers like Big Bazaar, now Reliance Retail, Amazon, they have massive bargaining power. If you are an FMCG company like HUL or ITC, you cannot ignore these retail giants. They decide shelf space, they decide promotion, they decide the margins. If ITC does not give the right price to Reliance Retail, they will not display ITC products at the forefront. They will end up taking a back seat, and some other companies' products will be shown, thereby all the revenue getting diverted to that company. Now, when you think of bargaining power of buyers, if the size of the buyer is bigger, if the buyer is a large entity, then naturally they have a better bargaining power. If the number of buyers is more in number, then again they are in a better position to influence the price. And uh, if the product that I am offering, I am a seller, I'm offering a product which is pretty much similar to the product offered by the next person, then in this case, because my offering is standardized, undifferentiated offerings enable easy supplier switching. So the buyer, if I am just selling something like, say, coffee, for example, a plain coffee, like a Nescafe coffee or something like this. Now, if I am selling it and the other person is selling the same coffee and the third person is selling the same type of coffee with no added flavors or anything, nothing to differentiate, I mean, the buyer can very easily jump from me to another person, right? Because there is nothing special that I'm offering him which will make him, come back to me again and again. If I'm selling, say, chana or kurmura or something like that, every kurmura tastes the same. It's not as if your kurmura is any different. So if you are selling undifferentiated products, then the bargaining power of buyers is more. And integration threat. Credible backward integration threats increase buyer leverage. What is backward integration? Let's try to understand that. See, integration is one business acquiring another business. Okay, it's like, think of it as an acquisition or an amalgamation, so to say. Now, when I'm talking about integration, one company is acquiring another company. Okay, you could acquire people who are down the supply chain, or you could acquire businesses who are up the supply chain. What is backward integration? It is a type of vertical integration where a company moves upstream in its supply chain, meaning it starts producing or controlling the inputs it previously bought from the suppliers. For example, think of ITC. Okay, ITC sells, it has an FMCG division also, and it sells snacks and biscuits and all of that. Now the packaging for biscuits, is basically these cardboard boxes. Earlier, ITC was purchasing it from someone, and that person was proving a difficult supplier. Now ITC has opened up its own cardboard manufacturing unit for using as covers. So naturally, it has started an activity which its supplier was doing, and that will now increase the bargaining power of the buyer, because the buyer will now say, ki, you want to sell your goods to me, you better sell it at a lower rate. Otherwise, I have my own business capacity to manufacture cardboard boxes. I don't need to rely on you. In that case, backward integration can, help the buyer to lower prices to a huge extent. And companies do it to reduce the dependence on suppliers, to cut prominent costs, to ensure that there are no delays or shortages of material, to ensure better quality of material, and to basically own the entire supply chain. Reliance does it. I mean, Reliance originally, when it started in the textile space, it integrated backwards into making polyester, crude oil, petrochemicals, and now Reliance controls the entire chain from oil refining to making fibers for textiles. And it gives it a cost leadership advantage, it gives it independence, and the reliance on external suppliers is greatly reduced. I mean, Amul is a dairy brand, but it integrates backwards by controlling milk procurement directly from the farmers through the cooperatives, and you remove the middlemen, so to say. I mean, there are endless examples. Starbucks on a global level, what it does is it doesn't just run cafes, it owns coffee farms and sources directly from farmers, cutting out all the intermediaries. That helps to maintain quality and for ethical sourcing as well. Now, bargaining power of suppliers. Basically, if the suppliers are in a position to control the price, because they have a stronger hold on the market, that is what we mean by bargaining power of suppliers. Okay, now suppliers, when will they be able to control market prices? There are multiple reasons why the bargaining power of suppliers could be more. Let's understand what could those circumstances be. See, suppliers can also exert pressure when they are few in number, or they provide any unique inputs, or threaten to integrate forward, they gain power. Now, let's assume that there is silk manufacturing happening, okay? And silk from silkworms in a particular part of the country, that silk is, quite rare, and it's of a very high quality. Like, I've heard of mulberry silk, these silkworms, they thrive on mulberry trees, and then they produce silk, and that silk has a different texture, a different color, and it is of a very different quality. Now, if what you are doing is truly unique, you can control the price in the market better. I mean, Maruti Suzuki. Its profitability depends heavily on suppliers of auto components like tire, electronics, steel. If the steel price goes up, or if the suppliers are few and powerful, the cost of Maruti will shoot up. I mean, look at Apple. I mean, Apple is a giant, no doubt, and the madness that is happening over iPhone 17. But Apple relies heavily on TSMC for advanced chips. This dependency gives bargaining power to the supplier, even over a company like Apple. I mean, in India's aviation industry, fuel supply is a major force. Jet fuel or aviation fuel is produced only by very limited oil companies. And that jet fuel, by the way, accounts for around 30 to 40% of airline operating cost. So they have little price flexibility when fuel price goes up. So the bargaining power of suppliers, can be like a very unique force controlling the overall pricing mechanism in the market. Here, we are thinking about supplier concentration. If there are a limited number of suppliers, naturally their bargaining power is more. If what they are producing is unique and nobody else is able to match that, again, their bargaining power is more. If the number of customers is too much and collectively they can't do anything, then again, bargaining power of suppliers is more. And if the supplier has the ability to do forward integration, basically start doing something down the supply chain, that again could be a threat to the bigger players, and that could be a threat to their customers also. So for example, earlier ITC was producing notebooks and books and everything, and they were selling it through other retail stores. Now ITC has set up its own stationery centers across the country, so that is forward integration. You are taking up an activity further down the supply chain, and that is how the bargaining power of suppliers is derived. And most important, or rather, the only way most of us have ever understood competition is industry rivalry. I mean, the e-commerce sector in India, it's a big example. Amazon, Flipkart, and now Reliance JioMart, they are engaged in an intense rivalry. They offer festive sales, cashbacks, deep discounts. Like, I heard of some festive sales starting very, very soon. Profitability is low because everybody is trying to fight the price battle, pushing the prices down. In the aviation sector, how many people do you have? You have Indigo, then Air India, Vistara. No, not anymore. Akasa and all of these airlines all working for your seat, for flying you out. And that industry has a different level of cutthroat competition. I mean, on a global level, the smartphone industry, Apple, Xiaomi, and Samsung, again, intense rivalry and heavy marketing spends to capture your attention. Rivalry is most intense when you meet your match and the industry is kind of saturated. I mean, think about it. How many phones will an individual have in the first place? I mean, there's only a limit. There's only this much that you can, these many phones that a person can have, which is one, maximum two, one work phone, one private phone. And that is where it gets cutthroat and it gets very, very dirty. So when the rivalry intensifies the industry, of course, if the industry growth has already slowed down, rivalry is fought on the basis of price, maybe by offering crazy product customizations. And see, a phone is a phone is a phone. How much product differentiation can you do at the end of the day? And beyond the point, you cannot even expand your capacity. So then, these rivalries, they do end up taking a very ugly turn at the end of the day. Let's now turn our attention to understanding customer markets. Okay, now what is this all about? See, beyond competition, you need a deeper understanding of customer markets and their mindsets. How do they think? What do they want? Uh, and how do you use this knowledge in order to ultimately grow your business? See, there are five types of markets. Okay, consumer markets, industrial markets, government markets, reseller markets, and export markets. Consumer markets means, Nestle selling Maggi noodles directly to consumers, direct to consumer market. Industrial markets where businesses are buying inputs. Like Tata Steel is selling steel to auto companies. That is the industrial market. Government market is public sector procurement, L&T supplying to defense projects of Government of India. Then reseller markets where intermediaries like wholesalers and retailers operate, and export markets selling abroad to foreign customers in other countries. Now, each market has its own unique dynamics. For example, government markets require navigating complex tendering process. You cannot get a government contract just like that. You have to fill a tender, and then you have to quote price, you have to quote the lowest price, you have to provide the best features. Only then you will get the government tender. Consumer markets, on the other hand, they play with your emotions, they play with your brand loyalty in order to win your attention. Industrial markets are about bulk buying and finding the correct strategic supplier for you. So you have to understand which market are you trying to cater to. Now, consumer goods also could fall into different categories, right? There could be those convenience purchases, like I order every day or almost every day on, Blinkit, because these are my convenience items like toothpaste and soap and items in my kitchen. So that's the convenience market. It's not a market with very high margins, but it's a market with a very high turnover. You could think of the shopping category, which is less frequent as compared to the convenience shopping. Like you don't buy a refrigerator every year, you don't buy a vacuum cleaner every year, and these decisions in the middle class families are taken after a lot of thought is given to it, right? These are like almost round table family discussions where people talk about these aspects. The specialty sector is, about luxury watches or luxury cars, high-end fashion, where it's premium positioning. And what people are actually looking at is, see, they associate a certain level of uh, quality, and what they are ultimately looking at is prestige. So people who are buying luxury watches, or people who are going for brands like Rolls Royce or Royal Enfield. See, these customers are fiercely loyal and they are price insensitive. Somebody who is spending on a Rolls Royce is not really going to think about, 10,000 or 50,000 or 1 lakh rupees of registry charges. For them, it's chiller money. And then you have services, which are basically intangible offerings, and they are unique. They depend on the provider, like haircuts or you know certain features, or certain restaurants, they have a unique offering which is not just food, but which is the overall ambience. And then it's very individualistic in that department. Now, when I'm looking at the industrial goods category, again, they serve very different functions. So, if I'm a seller who is in the industrial goods segment, I should know which aspect am I trying to cater to. Raw material, where I basically supply natural state inputs like iron ore, timber, crude oil extracted from the environment. Or I could be looking at processed material, which is basically I'm a supplier of textiles. And textile doesn't mean that everything has to be converted into a shirt or a sari. Textiles have far reaching, multiple uses. Am I in the capital goods segment, where I'm basically selling those goods which are used in the production of goods and services? Am I a supplier of consumables like stationery and fuel, which basically are not the main product, but they support the operations? And am I providing services like business support, insurance, debt factoring, maintenance contracts, so on and so forth? Once you know your market, once you know the categories in that market, that is when market segmentation becomes easier. And market segmentation as a process will help you to understand, it will help you to divide markets into smaller parts, smaller components, smaller segments, and then you can decide a strategy for each of these segments separately. Now, market segmentation is division of market into homogeneous groups of potential customers who may be treated similarly for marketing purposes. So within within, say for example, I'm selling chocolates, I'm selling Kit Kat. Now the regular Kit Kat is for 25 rupees. The bigger Kit Kat bars, I'm not getting I'm not remembering the name right now, but the bigger Kit Kat bars, they are for a very different usage altogether, and they are for 90 rupees or 100 rupees. And then chocolates like Toblerone, which are for 300 rupees, and then you have even more expensive chocolates. So when I'm a dealer in chocolates, I will divide my market into these parts, like the 25 rupees, 30 rupees wala chocolate for which college going students eat. Then these more expensive chocolates are probably gifted on Valentine's Day or special occasions. So it's for a different set of customers. Some chocolates are for the middle class consumers, some chocolates are for high end consumers. I'm dividing my market into different aspects or different subcategories. But this is not the only way in which market can be segmented, right? I could segment the market on geographical parameters, or I could pick up, say, demographic, like urban women, or say for example HUL makes a soap called Dove. It's for urban women, because they resonate more with that. And something like Lifebuoy, it's for mass consumption and hygiene. I could also do a more psychological based segmentation like lifestyle. For example, or lifestyle choices like Nike will appeal to fitness enthusiasts. Fab India, will be better for traditional eco-conscious buyers. And purchasing behavior like Amazon Prime is targeting frequent online shoppers with subscription benefits. So if Amazon notices that Satyamed, the buyer, keeps on, regularly purchasing, then, they will entice me with the Amazon Prime subscription by promising a lot of other deals to me, like reduced prices, free delivery, and all of that. And then, you have those buyers who don't purchase so frequently. So the market segmentation and targeting depends on multiple factors. There cannot be a one size fits all approach, but different customers need different marketing strategies. Different customers have different demands, and that is what will be the guiding force in breaking the customer base into smaller, manageable groups. And when you are segmenting, effective segmenting requires measurability, accessibility, substantiality, and stability. What does that mean? You need to know, how will you measure that this is a customer who is a frequent buyer, and this is a customer who is a less frequent buyer? You will have to set a threshold that a person who buys more than 2 times a month is a frequent buyer. Or you could have like persons, so that could be a threshold, right? So that is one of the starting points for you to understand how segmentation has to be done. And once you know how segments are made, then you can tailor your approach, you can tailor your pitch, you can tailor your package in terms of what you are providing and fulfill customer needs. So you have geographic segmentation based on purchasing characteristics, lifestyle segmentation based on demographic, based on other factors like age. Age could be a factor in breaking down breaking down your overall customers. Their income range would also become a critical factor in breaking down the customers. For example, luxury brands will be preferred by those individuals whose family income is, say, maybe above 50-60 lakh rupees, but others, they will still go for budget buys. So your ad targeting and all of that will have to change accordingly. And educational background, all of that also makes a change. Then at what stage of your life do you stand when you are at what stage of your life you are? What does that mean? For a married person, the needs are different. When you are targeting married persons, you should be showing, home decor products or, other home products. When you are targeting single population, at that time, maybe your focus should be products which reduce their work and build more convenience, not so much on aesthetic, but more so on, convenience aspect. Then the buying characteristics or purchasing characteristics, which basically is how frequently do you buy. And for these customers, you could entice them with a subscription package, or what is the timing of your purchases. So targeted ads can be sent to you accordingly. So these are different ways in which consumer segmentation can happen. The demographic segmentation models could be on socio-economic grouping or on family life cycle. Like young and single individuals, they don't need aesthetic beds and pillow covers and cushions. But newly married couples, who are, like enthusiastic about building a home, they need a different set of requirements in the house. Families with young children, families with older children, all of them want different things. Families with young children might want to baby proof the house. Families with older children, might need CCTV cameras, to keep an eye on the kids. Consumers who have gone beyond the age of retirement. So that's like a separate subcategory altogether. And socio-economic grouping could be on the basis of occupation levels, education levels, income and wealth indicators, and location. Now, when you are doing the segmentation, so that was the segmentation of consumer markets. When you are doing the segmentation of industrial markets, I think one way of doing that would be geographic focus, uh, dividing the customers basis the region they belong to, or purchase patterns, or for what use do they apply the products. Like when Satyamit purchases butter, he is using it for applying on his bread. But when a restaurant is purchasing butter, it's also for applying on the bread, but the quantity of purchase is going to be different, right? What are the expectations of these different customer groups, and how do you satisfy their needs? That could help you to break down the customer base and the organization profile. Are you a family run business? Are you a small medium enterprise? Are you a large company? What are your operational characteristics? How frequently do you place orders? What is the size of your orders? So all of these could be different ways of dividing the industrial market segment into smaller subgroups. And effective segmentation requires careful evaluation against specific criteria to ensure viability and practical implementation. What does that mean? Measurability, availability of reliable information and data to identify and quantify segment characteristics. For example, as I told you, Amazon wants to classify its customers into multiple categories. One category could be those customers who place orders frequently. The question is, how do you define customers who place orders frequently? What is the base for doing that? Uh, is 2 orders per month? Does that mean frequent buyers? So can you measure that? Do you have the data to segregate your customers into those categories? Then accessibility, practical ability to reach and serve the segment through appropriate distribution channels. I mean, you have identified high net worth individuals sitting in Mumbai, but your business is in Delhi. Is it possible for you to reach those high net worth individuals for selling your produce or for selling your product? Then does that segment offer you enough number of buyers that you need, that they deserve special separate attention? And that is substantiality, sufficient market sizes and growth potential to justify dedicated marketing investment and resource allocation. I mean, high net worth individuals in one part of the country, there could be, say 50 high net worth individuals overall. But for just for catering to the demand of 50 high net worth individuals, is it does it make sense? Is it worthwhile to have a separate subcategory of marketing channels, having a separate marketing campaign, having a separate sales strategy, It makes sense, when your customer base is large, but if the customer segment is not large enough, then maybe it should not be classified as a separate segment. And then there is stability, consistent buying behavior patterns that enable sustainable marketing strategy development and implementation. So when I'm talking of stability, what I'm trying to say is that, is it that segment or that group of customers which you have identified, are they going to make a one-off purchase, or do you expect consistent revenue stream from these individuals over a period of time? Okay, so if there is no consistent buying behavior and if it is going to be like a one-off purchase, then probably there is no point in having a dedicated team just to cater to that particular segment or that particular vertical. Maybe just integrate it in your regular business activity and don't have a separate segment only to cater to them. And when you are deciding the right marketing strategy, once segmentation analysis is done, you must evaluate each segment, find out what are their requirements, what do they need, so that you can tailor your delivery accordingly. Which means you should understand the differing requirements of customers in each segment. Customers who are buying a sedan, customers who are buying a convertible, customers who are buying, a budget car, all of them would have very different expectations from the product. All of them would require a different level of customer service, and you should know which category demands what. Then, talking about organizational capabilities, marketing strength, brand positioning, and product portfolio alignment with segment requirements. Basically, knowing, do you have, as an organization, do you have the capability to cater to the needs of these individuals, and do you have the skill set to tailor your marketing strategies to cater to each segment, because the advertisement that will work for a middle class consumer will not work for a high net worth individual. Then understanding the competitive landscape, what, again going back to Porter's five forces model and identifying which forces affect each segment, and positioning of rival products within target markets. And then of course strategic portfolio fit, how segment targeting aligns with overall business strategy and product development plans. See, like Reliance Jio, it showed all of us how new entrants can disrupt the entire market. The story of Zomato and Uber shows how substitutes can eat into growth. The bargaining power of buyers and suppliers when it comes to, Infosys global clients or Maruti steel suppliers, that change, the margins are constantly changing, and rivalry can wipe out profitability. So you should know whether the business that you are entering is suitable to the overall organizational perspective and the vision that you stand for. If the strategic fit is not happening, then maybe you should not go into that sector. You want a high margin business, then maybe the airline business is not necessarily for you, right? And when you develop marketing strategies, you should know which approach suits the current business the best. For example, if I'm talking about, there are three different approaches to marketing strategy. Undifferentiated marketing, single product targeting entire market without segmentation. So you don't really break down your customers, for selling a product like salt. I mean, most people don't really have a say in anything related to salt. It's like a basic necessity of life. Their undifferentiated marketing might work. When you do differentiated marketing, you are aware of the fact that there are multiple product versions available for different segments, and then you will have to change your marketing approach accordingly. Like a restaurant could have a fast food outlet also, and it could have a fine dine outlet also, and that fine dine outlet will have a different set of customers, and the fast food outlet will have a different set of customers, and you should know which strategy works where. But the costs are pretty high on this one. And then of course there is concentrated marketing, optimal product for single market segment. Okay. And you have one segment, you are focusing all your attention on that particular segment. There are limited expansion options, and you are always vulnerable to, other players entering and eating up into your business. So that was basically analysis of the business, which involved Porter's five forces model and analyzing other competitive forces. The next discussion that we'll do will be on Porter's value chain.